How weird will their marks look on your wrist? What you into?
Okay. They're going live.
I'll do it when they're live.
Come on.
Welcome to It's About Time. I'm your host, Alicia Robinson. On today's show, we have a gripping interview with the notorious serial killer, Jeffrey Dahmer, as well as the news you'll need from all the years in 1994. But first, we cut to Molly Davies in Studio 3 for a live performance.
Go again. Don't stop.
If you could get me a drink of water, 'cause my lips are chapped and faded, call my Anne-Marie. Help her gather all my things and bury me in all my favorite colors, my sisters and my brothers still. I will not kiss you, 'cause the hardest part of this is leaving you. Turn away, 'cause I'm awful just to see. Now all my hair's abandoned, all my body, all my agony. Know that I will never marry. Baby, I'm just soggy from the chemo, but counting down the days to go. It just ain't living, and I just hope you know that if you say goodbye today, I'd ask you to be true, 'cause the hardest part of this is leaving you. 'Cause the hardest part of this is leaving you.
4, 3.
Wow, Molly, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. We'll see you at the end of the show with another brilliant performance. I can't wait to get into the show. But first, we're going to cut to Ollie Wilby with the news for 1994.
Thank you. Hello and welcome to It's About Time News. I'm your news reporter Molly, and this is all the news you'll need to know from the year 1994. Today's first story comes from Manchester, where Oasis, the British rock band, have released their debut studio album, titled Definitely Maybe, featuring singles such as Rock and Roll Star, Supersonic, Live Forever, Cigarettes and Alcohol, as well as Slide Away and Half the World Away. The 17-track album is set to be a huge success among the band's fans. Our second story comes from Wisconsin, where notorious serial killer Jeffrey has been murdered in a prison block. He was serving 15 to life sentences for its gruesome murders. News reporter Chloe is live outside of the Columbian Correctional Institute with more on the story.
Wow, Molly, that was amazing. Thank you so much for that. We'll see you at the end of the show with another brilliant performance. I can't wait to get into the show. But first, we're going to cut to Ollie Wilby with the news for 1994.
Thank you, Kenny. Jeffrey Dahmer, whose gruesome exploits of murders, negrophilia and dismemberment shocked the world in 1991. Today I'm stood outside the Colombian Correctional Institute where he was serving 15 consecutive life sentences. It has been reported Dahmer has been attacked and killed inside his prison block. Dahmer, who's 34, was older than all of his victims who ranged from 14 to 33. He died inside his prison block from severe head injuries inflicted by another inmate. Dahmer's injuries were believed to have been inflicted between 10 to 8 and 10 past 8 a.m, where he was found in a pool of blood in the toilet area next to the prison gym, said Michael Sullivan, Secretary of Wisconsin Department for Corrections. Dahmer was pronounced dead shortly after 9 a.m. Mr. McCann, the Milwaukee County District Attorney, who sent Dahmer to prison in 1992, said, "This is a sad chapter in a very sad life." Tragically, Mr. McCann added, his parents will have to experience the same loss the families of the victims have experienced. A third inmate, Jesse Anderson, himself a notorious figure in the history of Milwaukee crime and race, was critically injured in the attack. Mr. Sullivan would not comment on a possible motive for the beatings, nor would he say if Dahmer or Anderson was the intended target of the attack. Back to you in the studio.
Thanks for that, Chloe. Moving on to our second story, Nirvana's frontman Kurt Cobain has sadly been found dead at his home in Seattle. It is believed Cobain was found in the early hours of the morning with a shot wound to his head and a gun between his knees. Officials investigating the star's death have said it is likely Cobain died on the 5th of April, but wasn't found until the 8th of April. They aren't treating the incident as suspicious. This comes just weeks after Cobain checked himself out of rehab, where he was being treated for drug-related issues. Courtney Love, Cobain's girlfriend, has said she's devastated by the loss and he will be sadly missed. The American football star O.J. Simpson has been arrested after an intense police chase on the 5 freeway, California. Simpson is the main suspect in a murder inquiry into the death of his wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, who was reported dead on June 12th outside her home in California. It was reported that the couple were having marital problems at the time of Brown's death. Simpson is reported to have been in the passenger side of the car holding the loaded gun to his head. It took 6 SWAT teams to detain OJ, and the driver, who has been identified as A.C. Cowlings, OJ's former teammate. This could go down in history as one of the world's most famous police chases. Quentin Tarantino has released his 8th film, Pulp Fiction. The film stars John Travolta and Uma. It is expected to be a favourite this summer, estimated to make $200 million at the box office. Tarantino has said, "I'm excited for the public to see Pulp Fiction. The cast and crew worked so hard on it. It's been a pleasure to work with such talented people. I think the audience will really enjoy it." Back to you in the studio.
Thanks for that. I'm here with Jeffrey. I have so much to ask you, so many unanswered questions.
Glad to be here. So, what is it you'd like to know?
Let's take a second to think about that.
Oh, indeed.
Can we start with your childhood? What was that like?
Well, I guess to begin with, my childhood was like any other. I had a nice home. I was brought up well, I'd say. But I guess it all changes as I got a bit older. I think I was about 15, 16 when my parents split up, and I'd say that was quite a big turning point in my childhood and in my life. And I'd say that had quite a negative impact.
So do you think that's what
me.
caused the urges to kill?
I mean, it would be wrong of me to blame that on my parents and put that on them. I think there was, I guess in retrospect, there were some deep-rooted problems growing up, and that maybe I just wasn't like other children in that sense.
I think that's very clear.
Well,
Was there any traumatic events that caused your first killing?
off the top of my head, there's nothing that really sticks out, no. I mean, it was built up over many years and there was a lot of agitation and anger built up. That may have led to the first time. I mean, all the memories are quite foggy, I don't remember it very clearly. But, yeah.
Do you know any of the families of the victims that you've killed?
I mean, I can't say I personally know them. It was quite difficult standing up in court and hearing the testimonies obviously against me from the families. Obviously it's quite difficult to hear, and I understand that I've affected quite a lot of people's lives negatively. So yeah, it's difficult, but it's just something I've got to live with now.
And can you tell us what life in prison's like?
Well, I mean, life in prison's never going to be fun for anybody, but especially when you are convicted of murdering young boys and the acts that you could say I committed on them. So yeah, it's not been difficult. People haven't taken to me very well, but I guess again, it's my own doing.
It's a shame. How did you feel watching people die when it did happen?
Well, as sick as it is to say, I got some gratification from it, in a sense. It's something that I'd fantasised about for many years, and as sick as it is, it was quite a satisfying experience in a way. And it's not something that I can look back on with pride, but it's just one of those things in my life.
Can I ask a question? Why did you keep souvenirs after each death?
Well, in a sense, as I'd built up to these moments for so long, I wanted something to kind of remember them for. I wanted to be able to keep them for longer than the experience happened. So yeah, it was just kind of, it was like a memorial.
I'm now going to introduce a documentary about our notorious serial killer.
Jeffrey Dahmer, the merciless killer of 17 young men, notorious for his cannibalistic acts between the years of 1978 and 1991. Dahmer was incarcerated for his crimes in 1994, 3 years after his last murder. Dahmer was sentenced to 50 consecutive life sentences without the chance of parole. But where did it all begin for Dahmer? It started one day when Dahmer was 6 years old. His dad had gone into the crawl space underneath their house to empty out any dead animals. His dad put the bones in a bucket where young Dahmer picked up the bones and dropped them back down again. As Dahmer grew, his collection of roadkill and animal carcasses grew also. As Dahmer moved into high school, the difference between him and other teenagers was very noticeable. Dahmer was much quieter and withdrawn in comparison to his classmates. And then, at the age of 18, on the 18th of June, 1978, Dahmer committed his first murder. The victim, 18-year-old Stephen Hicks. Dahmer took Hicks back to his parents' house, where he struck him over the head with a barbell before strangling him with it. Dahmer dismembered the body of his first victim and then buried the body parts in plastic bags behind his parents' home. After this, Dahmer's murders became more brutal than the last. However, it wasn't until September 1987 that Dahmer took his second victim, Stephen Toomey. Both of them checked into a hotel room where they drank excessively. Dahmer eventually awoke to find Toomey dead, with no memory of the previous night's events. It was at this point Dahmer also began carrying out particularly disturbing acts with their corpses, continuing to use bodies for intercourse, taking photographs of the dismemberment process, and preserving with scientific precision his victims' skulls and genitals for display, and even keeping body parts for him to eat. By the summer of 1991, Dahmer began killing around one person each week. He was obsessed with the idea he could turn his victims into zombies to act as youthful and submissive sexual partners. He used many different techniques, such as drilling holes into the skull and injecting hydrochloric acid or boiling water into their brain. Soon, neighbours began to complain about strange noises and awful smells coming from Dahmer's apartment. On one occasion, a lobotomised victim, left unattended, even made it out onto the street to ask several bystanders for help. When Dahmer returned, he successfully convinced the police that he was an irrational young man, was simply his intoxicated boyfriend. On July 22nd, 1991, Dahmer lured Tracy Edwards into his home with the incentive of cash, in exchange for letting Dahmer take naked photographs of him. While inside, Edwards was then forced into the bedroom by Dahmer with a butcher knife. During the police car. When the police arrived at Dahmer's apartment, Edwards alerted them to the knife that was in the bedroom. Upon entering the bedroom, the officers found the pictures of dead bodies and dismembered limbs. Further investigation of the home led them to find a severed head in the refrigerator, 3 more severed heads throughout the apartment, multiple photographs of the victims, and more human remains in the refrigerator. A total of 7 skulls were found in his apartment, as well as a human heart in the freezer. An altar was also constructed with candles and human skulls in the closet. After being taken into custody, Dahmer confessed and began divulging the gruesome details of his crimes to the authorities.
So when it came to the people you killed, did you have a type?
Well, I guess a big part of that plays into growing up my obviously homosexual tendencies. Obviously living in the time I did, it was a thing that was quite frowned upon, and it was difficult for me to come to terms with that almost. So I guess a way of me channeling that without it being public was me killing the people that I was into, which...
Does make sense.
Well, I suppose it does, yes. So, yeah, they were usually males, normally a couple of years younger than me, you could say. So, yeah, that was generally it.
After the murders, did you really care that you were caught or not?
Well, obviously the realisation that it had come to an end and that was essentially my life over was quite upsetting and, again, hard to come to terms with. It's not a nice feeling at all, obviously. When I was actually in the act and committing the murder, I was on like a bit of a high. It was almost like a buzz. It was something I'd led up to for many years. And then when it come to the end, it was kind of like coming back down to earth and just coming to terms with that, really. So, yeah.
Did you have a normal life before you killed your first victim?
In a way, yes. I lived a normal life as anybody else would see. I mean, obviously the underlying thoughts and the problems that had been there since an early age were always there, and there was no hiding that. But in what I did day to day and my general activities, yeah, it was relatively normal until obviously the murder started.
Was there an event in your life that started off these murders?
Again, I'm not too sure. It was built up to for quite a while, and it was just something that had always been in the back of my mind, and then one day it just became a reality, and from there it just spiraled out of control, I guess.
Well. Wow.
Well, it's interesting. I'm interested to see that from your point of view, somebody that has never met me as a person, probably never seen anything like this. How is it perceived by the public?
Well, the public were pretty shocked when they found out you killed multiple men. Being a homosexual, I would have thought it would have been women that you would have killed.
Understandable, but then obviously with me repressing them homosexual feelings, I guess I kind of needed an outlet for that and a way to express that in my own way, so that was just kind of how I did it, really.
Well, you spoke of feeling a high off these murders. Can you explain what that high felt like while you were in the act?
It was kind of like I was in a dream. It didn't feel like I was there committing it. It's like an out-of-body experience of something that I'd dreamed about so much and I'd thought about and fantasised over so much. It was kind of like I was looking down on myself doing it, and yeah, I just got a buzz off it.
So murder to you is like a drug?
I guess you could say that, yes, and again in the sense that it was quite addictive, and that once I'd committed the first murder, it led on to obviously other murders, and yeah, it was definitely something that was completely out of control by the end of it.
So I take it you never felt remorse afterwards?
Well, it's difficult to say because it was a balance between obviously the high that I was getting and fulfilling these fantasies, and then obviously having it on my conscience that I'd taken another person's life. And I think the remorse kind of hit more once I'd been caught and once I'd been made to realise that what I'd done was wrong. So in the act, I'd say that I didn't feel as much remorse, but definitely whilst I've been in prison and whilst I've been thinking it over, there's been a lot more, definitely.
Do you think if you were never caught, this remorse wouldn't be felt?
Well, I feel like it would have caught up to me at some point, as I've just been handed a mic just to make it.
It happens.
Yes, theatrics. So yeah, can you ask me that question again? Sorry.
I was going to say, if you were never caught, what would it have? Did you feel the remorse then?
Yes. No. I think eventually it would have caught up to me and I would have felt that remorse, but in the time when I was committing the acts, it didn't quite hit me as much what I was doing. Like I said, it was more like I was dreaming and like I was on that high, so it almost felt like I wasn't actually there doing it. So now I've seen the public reaction and that I've been told more about what I've done, yes, I've felt a lot more remorse, definitely.
This might be a little bit gory, but can you explain how you murdered your victims?
I think that may be a bit too graphic for TV. I think there might be some younger viewers out there that could be quite disturbed by that. All I will say was that after the murders there was some decapitation and yeah, it did get quite graphic, so I will leave the rest to the imagination.
Well, I mentioned before that you kept souvenirs. What are those souvenirs, without getting into too much detail?
Well, we got some arms.
A few arms?
Some legs. Just whatever takes my fancy at the time, to be honest, yeah.
What's your favourite body part if you had to pick one?
Well, again, I'll leave that one to the imagination.
I don't think I want to think about that right now. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I guess it's a bit late for it, but I'd like a public apology. I'd like to personally apologise to the families, as it was never my intention to hurt these people. It was more me satisfying my own needs and my own desires at the time, and I guess I didn't really think about the consequences that would have. So this is almost like a public apology to everybody's lives that I've affected.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so glad I could talk to you. But now we're going to end the show with a performance from Molly in the studio. Thank you.
Oh, it hurts the most 'cause I don't know what grows. Maybe I shouldn't have cried when you left and told me not to wait. Oh, it kills the most to say that I still care. Now I'm left trying to rewind the times you held and kissed me back. I wonder if you're thinking, is she alright all alone? I wonder if you tried to call but couldn't find your phone. Have I ever crossed your thoughts because you